My name's James Rosewell from 51 Degrees, and during DNN Connect 2016 in Spain, I ran a session on web design for profit in DNN. The second half of that session involved a hands-on guide of how to make some changes to DNN Community and Platform and Evoq editions in order to enable image optimization and device intelligence, and why that was useful. This video is going through the 5 major elements of that particular part of the session: configuring the DNN system to enable these features, linking the device intelligence to Google Analytics, configuring some specific web pages so that they can be optimized and altered for different types of devices, how to optimize images automatically, and then also how to access the device intelligence server side. So to start with, let's have a look at DNN. I've got a DNN Community Edition set up here, and it's running a blog and a podcasting website called thephonecast.com. So it's running 8.0.03, and it's just the standard Community Edition. So coming into the host menu, the first thing we need to do is enable device detection, and that's done under the device detection management option. Now, by default, DNN Community and DNN Platform editions will have all these options disabled. These are the options here, and the two in particular that we need to enable are the top two: device image optimization and device detection. It's also a good idea to enable file mode. File mode doesn't load the database into memory, it keeps it in on the file, and only uses about 26 megabytes of memory, so pretty unnoticeable. You can see whether device detection is enabled by choosing the Device Data Information tab, and by default Community Edition will have light here next to name once these options have been enabled. And light gives you basic features, gives you access to screen size information in pixels, but not all the things that we're going through in this demonstration. If you want to use a different data file, Premium or Enterprise, then you can do so in two ways. One is by using Evoq, which includes Premium data out of the box. Premium data is updated weekly, contains more combinations of devices, or Enterprise, which is updated daily. If you don't use Evoq and you want to just use a free trial of 51 Degrees, just come to 51degrees.com, click on Sign Up for a free trial, and if you complete the information on this form, you'll then be able to download the latest Premium or Enterprise data files, and you can then upload them into DNN using this option here. Alternatively, you can get a license key and you can paste that into this management screen, and the advantage of the license key is you can enable automatic updates which will keep the data file up to date for you. Now, what does this data file do? Well, it contains information about different devices, and you know it's enabled when you click on, say, top 5 new devices. You can actually see some devices are available here, and you can also view the properties that are available under the Available Properties tab. And if you want to know more information, then click on Get Started, and you can find out more information here as well, and on the links that are available off of this page. So by using this screen, we're enabling device intelligence, making this device data available to .NET Nuke. In order to use all the features we're going to look at in this demonstration, we need to come into the hosts and the configuration menu and choose the web.config file. Now, the section that we're looking for has 51 Degrees 51 Foundation Mobile Detection Detector module, and what we need to do is remove the precondition managed handler. And what this does is it enables 51 Degrees to serve different types of content, so it can serve dynamic JavaScript and it can serve optimized images, and those are the two features that we're going to be using through this video. So once those two things are done, let's have a look at how we can add 51 Degrees device data into Google Analytics, and just how simple that is. So we go from this screen into the Site Analytics page, and this is the configuration that tells DNN what to put in the header of a web page for Google Analytics. And this has been altered slightly to use custom dimensions from Google. So you can configure in Google different dimensions. So in this case I've configured dimension 1 to be the price band of the device, dimension 2 to be the device type, etc. So these are configured to align to Google, and whenever Google Analytics is sent data from the web page via the JavaScript, then this information is added to it. But what we need to do, as well as configuring the custom dimensions, is configure the source of the data. So we've got this object here, FODF, 51 degrees features, and that contains these properties. Now let's actually have a look at that JavaScript. This is something that's generated dynamically. So if I type in the URL for any website with this enabled, 51 degrees.features.js, then I get all the information that 51 degrees has available about the device back in the form of a JSON object, which can then be accessed through the object name FODF. And we can see that there. I needed to add HTTPS to the beginning of the URL. If I just want a subset of those properties, generally you don't need all of them. I just want device type, for example, then I can get that simply by adding it to the query string. So if we come back to the configuration, we can see we've got 51 degrees features.js, and then we've got a list of different properties that we want back, which are then assigned to those custom dimensions. It's as simple as that. It's simply changing this data file, this configuration file, so that Google can receive that information. What does that look like in Google? Well, if I come across to Google Analytics, this is the corresponding Google Analytics administration environment. I can see, for example, I've got screen inches diagonal rounded, and I can then come in here to the drop down list, and I can see I can create a segment, say, for 5-inch users. So I can see that of the traffic coming to this particular website over a given time period, 13% of that traffic was coming from users with 5-inch screens, or I could choose 4-inch screens. So I can create different segments. I can also, I've got in here screen inches square. So we can see the number of square inches, the actual amount of space that's available on the screen. So it's giving you these extra dimensions, which may be useful depending on your business segment, where you want to know more than just tablet and smartphone and desktop. You want to know more information about the screen size, or you want to know about network and available radios or input methods and things like that, and correlate this information to other information that's available in Google Analytics. So coming back to the website, let's actually look at what this website is doing. So I'm using the Easy DNN News module. Almost all the modules on this site are Easy DNN News, and it's using a responsive theme. So if I just shrink the window, we get the typical classic alteration of the page occurring, the menu moves around, etc. But there are some problems with that. If I use in another tab, I go and use Chrome's feature to emulate a mobile phone. I'm now emulating a Galaxy S5. So this section here is the S5, and things like the advert here at the top of the page, it now stretches across the screen. This particular iframe isn't sitting nicely, and all the content though is adapting as you'd expect with responsive, and we've got this very, very long scroll. Those of you who were in the session would have been part of the discussion about the type of the amount of data and the amount of time and the length of these pages now that are being generated as everything just gets laid out underneath each other, and perhaps that's not always the best user experience. So what's been set up here is an alternative. So let me have a look at the podcast page, for example. When I'm on a mobile phone, I'm getting just a short number of stories, more pagination. But if I go to that same page, podcast, on the tab that isn't emulating a mobile phone, I'm getting a lot more information. I'm getting all the calendars, the archives, all that sort of information available as well. So how do I set that up? Well, there's a section in DNN that again is perhaps little used, called Site Redirection. Just before we jump to there, let's look at the pages and how the site's actually being constructed. So I've got my main pages, with all the content on them, and then I've got a page called mobile, and I've just taken 3 of these pages. These are the 3 that I'm particularly interested in. The other pages are quite small, they don't really need this sorts of feature, and I've created alternative pages which we saw earlier. But I need to tell DNN how to serve content from different pages depending on the type of device, and that's all featured under the admin menu under Site Redirection Management. So what you do coming in here is you can create different rules. I've set up 3 different rules for this site, so I can look at the news rule, and I've configured it with the name news so it matches the pages. You can see here in the hierarchy we've got the news page at the top of the website, and that relates to the news page under the mobile menu. So there's a relationship being established between the 2 of them, and I can select that I want to redirect from the main news page to the mobile news page when the device is a mobile phone. I can choose more advanced rules as well. I've got all the 51 degrees capability available. If for some reason you wanted to just direct people on Opera browsers to a particular page, then you could do that easily in this section as well. But the most popular scenarios are configured here in the options list. And each of these 3 does exactly the same thing, so it's relating the 2 pages, the mobile version and the non-mobile version. So with that set up, again, if I come back to this, use emulating a mobile phone, and I go to news, you can see the URL is thephonecast.com/news, and that redirection has kicked in and it's redirected us across to the news page for mobile by putting mobile into the URL. And we've got this different content. Now what I'm choosing to do on this particular page is, rather than showing the full text of the article, I'm showing just the snippets. And again, that's a feature available in Easy DNN News. Where I've got content that I don't wish to have on the same page, I've got an archive button here, for example. So rather than having that long list underneath the calendar, I can just put that on a separate page. So easy to get to. Now something you may have noticed about this page is I've changed the way the advertising works. So what I'm using here is, rather than using Google's advertising, I've put in place a responsive image. So I'm just going to flick back to this tab here, and let's go and edit that page as a desktop. I've got a little bit more screen space. So editing this page, that particular area at the top is just an HTML module, and if I click into edit that content and show how that's constructed, there's just a little piece of HTML here. It's a standard image tag with one difference. The difference is that the source of the image is an empty GIF, and this is being served from 51 degrees again through that module. So if I come in here and request empty GIF, I get a response. In fact, any URL that ends empty GIF is going to come back with an empty GIF, and it is a 1x1 empty image. And that's requested when the DOM is rendered for the first time. And then after the DOM is rendered, what happens is 51 degrees will go through and look for these data source attributes. And in this particular case, we've got the URL that we wish to URL for the image, and in the query string we've got w equals auto. So that's telling 51 degrees to work out automatically what the image size should be. So now let's actually look at that in practice. So I'm going to use the change the width of the browser here, come out of edit mode, and if we look at this image here, I will come out of so if I look at this particular image, it's 603 pixels wide. You can just see that up there, image 603 by 300 pixels is the dimensions of this particular image, and you can actually see the request was actually looking for an image that was 921 pixels wide, but then the way 51 degrees works is it won't upscale the image, it won't make the image larger than the source. So in this particular case, this particular image isn't actually couldn't possibly be 921 pixels wide, so it's returned the next best thing. Now if I shrink this window down, and then refresh the page, we can now see that the image has changed. So in this particular case it's now only 300 pixels wide. So what 51 degrees is doing is intercepting the request for the image, looking for these parameters like W equals auto, and returning an image that's optimized for that particular size. So it is super easy to use. If we now move over to the JavaScript that makes this happen, there's another client-side include called 51degrees.core.js, and this renders browser-specific JavaScript for image manipulation based on that device intelligence. So 51degrees.core contains JavaScript that can do extra client-side things. In this case, this is the code that's handling the image optimization on this particular type of device. So most desktop devices support this this type of JavaScript. So it's very easy to add optimized images in, and there's clearly a bandwidth saving by doing so. Some of the other features that we've got available here, for example, infinite scroll may not work very well on a desktop, but it is quite a neat way of just loading a little bit of information and then allowing the user to keep scrolling on a mobile. But in this particular case it wouldn't make sense to have an advert at the bottom of the page. So this is just using the infinite scroll feature where I want to use that on a mobile phone where it makes sense, given that the eye tends to stay still and the content moves under where the eye is watching, whereas on a desktop site, if I flick back here, the eye's darting around left and right, and the way the content's laid out can be that little bit different, but still all the information available, it's just the way it's presented. And all of this just using the standard controls that come, in this case, with easy DNN use. So the last thing I'd like to show is how to access this information on the server side via Redirection. So I've set up a page on this site called Device Details, if I remember it correctly. So the device details page is just showing us some of the attributes of the device. Now in this case I'm running as a desktop. If I take this URL and flick across to the emulator, if I bring that back up, I'll choose the S5 again and enter here. Again, it's all the same responsive skin, but in this case the Redirection is pulling the information out and presenting it in this little table. So we can see it's a Samsung. The model name for the S5 is the SMG900P. I've got some information about pricing. I could flip over to the Lumia and bring that up, and I get some additional information about that particular device. So all of that's done using server side in Redirection. So let's actually have a look at that Redirection. So this is the script, and we're not using any DNN specific stuff here. This is just using classic old Microsoft's HTTP browser capabilities interface. So what you do is you just use standard Razor request.browser square brackets, and then in speech marks you put the property that you're interested in, and you get the value back as a string. And that is the easiest way to request data. It doesn't require any providers that aren't part of the Microsoft framework. And just to see that in action again, here's that particular table with the data in for a desktop, and here's the same table for a mobile. Let's flick over, try the Nexus 5, slightly bigger screen. Or 6 is 6p even. That's coming out there into the table. Simple as that. So what we've been through is the configuration of DNN, how to set it up so that these features become available. There's no new extensions or plugins or additional information that's or components that are needed in order to get basic image optimization and some of that basic redirection and data available. If you need things like device type, you want to know physical screen size and things like that, then the premium data or the enterprise data needs to be added into the device management section. And that can be done either by using Evoq or by registering for that free trial with 51 degrees, and then of course talk to my colleagues or myself if you want to know more. Once it's set up, we can use page redirection in order to relate pages to one another so that on particular types of devices a redirection can occur, and things like the infinite scroll on smartphone, which isn't desirable on desktop. It's a very, very simple way of presenting these slightly better user experiences and tailoring the site to the capabilities of the device. We looked at Google Analytics and how the 51degrees.featured.js JavaScript and the JSON object that's created there can be used to add custom dimensions into Google Analytics. And then we looked at image optimization, the way that a single 1x1 pixel GIF is used in order to determine the size of the container effectively that's going to display the image, and how that 51degrees.core.js file then looks for the data source attribute and populates the auto properties to request an image of the right size. And finally, on the server side, we looked at using Razor and the request.browser HTTP capabilities instance in order to retrieve information about the device. So very easy to do, presents some more possibilities. Do keep us posted with any questions or any information that you'd like to know. The best way to do that, particularly if you want to play with the extended data, the premium and enterprise data, is just to come through here, sign up for a free trial, or of course contact us, and one of our team will be in touch. There's also a forum on the website as well, or using DNN incidentally, where you can ask questions or look at the knowledge base.